When I first saw the moving trucks outside the house across the street, I didn't think much of it. Another family moving into our peaceful suburban neighborhood, nothing out of the ordinary. But that peace started fading the moment Karen and her teenage son, Chase, arrived. Karen introduced herself the very next day, or rather she announced herself. She marched right up to me as I was washing my red 2022 Mustang GT in the driveway. "Oh, that's a loud color," she said, wrinkling her nose. "You know, we have HOA rules about flashy vehicles." I smiled politely and replied, "Ma'am, this neighborhood doesn't have an HOA." Her expression froze. "Oh, we'll see about that," she muttered before walking off. Her son Chase was about 16, the kind of kid who looked like he thought the world revolved around him. Every time I caught him glancing at my car, his eyes lit up like he was staring at a prize he had to touch. I told him once, "Look all you want, but don't touch." He laughed and said, "Relax, old man. I just want to feel the horsepower someday." That someday came sooner than I thought. A week later, I woke up early on a Saturday, planning to take my Mustang out for a morning drive. But when I opened my garage, I froze. The car was gone. My heart dropped. I checked the locks, no signs of forced entry. Then I noticed the spare key, which I kept in the kitchen drawer, was missing. Panic hit me. I called 911, but before I could finish explaining, I heard sirens, close. Then came the unmistakable sound of a police radio crackling outside. I ran down the street and saw it. My car, smashed into the side of a police cruiser just 2 blocks away, and standing beside it, hands in the air, was Chase. Karen was there too, screaming at the officers, "He's just a kid! He was borrowing it!" My stomach twisted. My car was wrecked, and somehow Karen was making me the bad guy. As I approached, one of the officers turned to me and said, "Sir, is this your vehicle?" I nodded silently, staring at the mangled front bumper. Karen snapped, "You shouldn't leave such an expensive car lying around." Of course he wanted to drive it. That's when I realized this wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of war. The scene at the crash site looked like something out of a bad comedy. Flashing police lights, 2 crushed cars, and Karen screaming like she was auditioning for a reality show. I stood there speechless, staring at my Mustang's twisted hood and shattered headlights. My dream car, the one I'd worked years for, was a wreck. The officer closest to Karen was trying to calm her down. "Ma'am, your son stole this vehicle and—" "Stole?" she shrieked, cutting him off. "He didn't steal anything. He was just borrowing it. My Chase would never do something wrong." Meanwhile, Chase was standing beside the cruiser, looking like he'd just realized real life didn't have a reset button. He avoided eye contact, but I could tell he knew he was in deep trouble. I took a deep breath and said to the officer, "Yes, the car is mine. And no, I didn't give anyone permission to drive it." Karen immediately spun toward me, jabbing a finger in my face. "You're overreacting. He's a good kid. You left your garage open. What did you expect? Tempting him like that!" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're blaming me for your son stealing my car and crashing into a police cruiser?" She crossed her arms. "It's not stealing if you live in the same neighborhood. Community property, right?" The officer actually laughed under his breath before regaining composure. "Ma'am, that's not how property works." Karen huffed and stomped her foot. "Well, I'll be talking to my lawyer about this, and to the police chief. You can't arrest a minor for something so trivial." The second officer, a taller man with a calm voice, finally spoke. "Ma'am, your son not only took a vehicle without permission, he also struck a police car. That's destruction of government property. We'll need to take him in." Karen's face went pale for half a second, then she turned on me again. You're the reason he's in this mess. You're lucky we don't sue you for distress." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Distress? Lady, I'm the one who's out a car." Chase was handcuffed and led into the back of another police cruiser. Karen screamed after him, "Don't worry, baby. Mommy will fix this." The officers drove off and Karen stood there glaring daggers at me. "You'll regret this," she hissed, before storming away. I just stood on the curb, staring at the mangled wreck that used to be my pride and joy. Something told me this wasn't over, not even close. For a brief moment, I thought the worst was over. Chase had been taken in, the report was filed, and the police assured me the insurance process would handle the damages. But I should have known. Karen wasn't the type to back down. 2 days later, I was sipping my morning coffee when I heard knocking. Loud, angry, and relentless. I opened the door and there she was. Sunglasses, messy hair, holding a clipboard like she was about to conduct an investigation. "Good morning," I said flatly. "Don't good morning me," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my son?" "I think he did that to himself," I replied. Karen shoved the clipboard toward me. "You're going to pay for his legal fees and damages. My lawyer says you're partially responsible for leaving. Your keys somewhere he could find them." I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, your kid broke into my house, took my spare key, and crashed my car into a police cruiser. If anything, you owe me." Her lips tightened. "You think this neighborhood is going to side with you? I've already spoken to a few of our neighbors. They agree your car is an eyesore and too dangerous for our streets. We're forming a safety committee." There it was, the classic Karen tactic. When she couldn't win with reason, she'd form a fake authority. "You can form whatever you want," I said. "Doesn't change the fact your son committed a crime." She smirked. "We'll see about that." For the next few days, the harassment began. I caught Karen taking pictures of my property, standing across the street with her phone like she was collecting evidence. Then I started receiving anonymous notes in my mailbox. "Keep your dangerous toys off our roads. You should apologize to the Wilsons for traumatizing their son." I knew exactly who was behind it. To make things worse, Karen had somehow convinced a few gullible neighbors that I was pressing unfair charges against a poor teenager who made a mistake. Suddenly, people I'd waved to for years started ignoring me. But the final straw came that Thursday evening. I came home to find eggs splattered across my garage door, and a note taped to it that read, "Maybe now you'll think twice before ruining a young man's future." I called the police again, and when the officer arrived, he sighed and said, "Sir, you might want to get some cameras. This woman's not going to stop." I stared down the street at Karen's house. Her curtains moved, she was watching me, and I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I'd tried being reasonable. I'd tried ignoring her. But now it was time to fight back, legally and smartly. First, I installed high-definition security cameras around my property, front, back, and even pointing toward the street. The technician asked, "Dealing with raccoons?" I smirked. "Something worse, a Karen." That evening, I got exactly what I expected. Around 9 p.m., the cameras caught Karen sneaking into my driveway with a flashlight. She bent down, scribbled something on my mailbox, and walked off giggling. When I checked in the morning, she'd spray-painted "car thief" in red letters across it. That was the final proof I needed. I called the same officer who handled Chase's case and showed him the footage. He sighed and said, "You've been more than patient, sir. It's time we handle this." Within the hour, 2 patrol cars pulled up to Karen's house. I stood across the street, pretending to check my mail as the officers knocked. Through my camera zoom, I saw her face when they showed her the evidence. Priceless. She started yelling before they even finished speaking. "You can't arrest me for paint! I was defending my family!" she screamed. But the officers didn't care. They handed her a citation for vandalism and trespassing. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Suddenly, the same neighbors, who'd been giving me dirty looks, were back to waving and apologizing. Turns out Karen's little committee dissolved overnight once everyone realized she'd crossed the line. But karma wasn't done with her yet. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the police department. Chase had been sentenced to community service and ordered to pay restitution for the damage to both my car and the cruiser. Since he was a minor, his mother was financially responsible. When I saw her again, she was standing at her mailbox, red-faced and furious. She shouted across the street, "You think you've won, don't you?" I smiled. "No, Karen. I just think justice finally showed up." She stomped inside, slamming her door so hard it echoed down the block. I looked over at my newly repaired Mustang, shiny, perfect, and better than ever. The insurance had covered everything, and even the cops had thrown in a free detail job as a thank you for my cooperation. As I revved the engine, I caught sight of Karen's curtain twitching again. I gave her a little wave before driving off. That day, I realized something simple. Sometimes the loudest Karens make the best lessons, and the sweetest revenge is just letting the law do its job.